IoT Unplugged, where we talk to industry leaders, innovators, and major players in the Internet of Things, bringing you the best and latest insights. Tune in to learn more. In this episode, I speak to Alexander Fritsch, Senior Product Sales Manager at Advantech Europe, as he takes me through the evolution of Edge AI, architectural considerations, and what he sees happening in the next 3 to 5 years. Hi, Alexander. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. Could you quickly introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are for our audience?
Sure. Thank you, Caitlin, for having me here. My name is Alexander Fritsch. I'm a so-called Product Sales Manager of Advantech Europe. I'm responsible for the whole Edge AI approach of Advantech Europe's embedded IoT sector and also supporting our sales on that journey, put it that way.
Great. Can you introduce Advantech?
Sure. I mean, Advantech, for those who don't know Advantech was founded was founded 1983. Our founder, Casey Liu, is still in the game. So he's still leading the company with his heart. Advantech is a stock-listed company. We had a revenue of around 1.87 billion in 2024. Globally, we have around 8,800 employees. Around 500 of them are in Europe. In basically every country, we have a sales office, and we have more or less three major facilities in Europe. One is in Eindhoven, which is more our logistics and operations center. We have an, technical hub in Munich, Gammering, and we have some further RMA service centers, and some small manufacturing in Poland, in Warsaw. So that's it, basically, in a nutshell.
Great. So for those who may or may not know, you at Advantech have been talking a lot about Edge AI, you've been looking a lot about processing data on the edge, and that will be a big part of our conversation today. But before we get into the technical that comes with that, it would just be great to hear from you what you've seen from Edge AI and its evolution, what the key developments have been, what you guys have noticed at the company.
Yeah. That's a good question, actually. I mean, everybody is talking about Edge AI or AI in general, right? It's the next buzzword, or the current biggest buzzword. If you're not talking about AI, then basically you're out of the game already. But on the other hand, of course, there is more depth to that. So, I mean, if you think it from a traditional classic way, for example, like number plate recognition, to talk about a specific application, what we all know already, right? So you have a number plate, you enter your parking lot, and once you leave, the camera again recognizes your number plate. This is actually not AI at its fullest, right? So this is some classic algorithms, but of course you want to get more out of the data. And AI in general is driving basically all about more into the efficiency and in increasing really this efficiency. And if we think from the different, phases, to simplify it, I would make it maybe 3 phases. So starting with AI at a device at the edge, right? So it was kind of isolated. You had not much data being sent to the cloud back then. So it was all more localized. That transitioned somewhere. So you brought up some additional connection, which we then see as, second version of the cloud of the edge to AI. And here you got the connection. So from edge to the cloud. So you really leveled up the device's power, basically, and also you got a bit more intelligence to that, environment already. But the intelligence is basically still in the cloud, right? It's not on the edge. And if we transform that now to the level where we are now and where we are basically pushing from a global perspective, then we are talking about AI at the edge. That means really you enable the edge device to have this intelligence, so to be capable of local simulations, trainings, and these kind of deployments and all around that. And the ultimate goal is really to have the self-learning then at the edge. So then we are at the, highest level of adoption, that you really have the intelligence of a device at the edge to train itself, to develop more efficiency for its dedicated purpose, whatever it is. Okay, so that's basically how I would separate those levels.
This aim to have it, what was the term you used? I don't think autonomously was the term, but it kind of sounds like that's what you're getting at. Is that something you think we're close to, or is that still some way away when we look at development and what's required?
It depends. I mean, if you talk about autonomous, then, I mean, still at this stage, in a lot of the cases, or in most cases, the human being is still controlling the, let's say, intelligence, the artificial intelligence here. Even if you think about, for example, self-driving cars, like we already have it today, right, with Tesla being one of the major impacts on the market. But also, if you took the look at the China market, for example, in Shenzhen, you have those self-driving cars, of course, more China branded, with different safety and security levels there, which makes them a bit easier to handle. So yes, it's already there, but still being controlled in the background by human beings. And I think this is also, and will definitely be the case for the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. At the end, it might be the ultimate goal that it's completely self-learning and self-developed, but with all the concerns, of course. Especially, I mean, everybody thinks then about Terminator, for those who already were alive back then when the film was recorded or made. But yeah, it's kind of still this what we see as concern, of course, how to control really this artificial intelligence at a full autonomous level. And I think it will take a lot of time until this really takes place.
Yeah, I was talking to someone recently about they essentially they have AI integrated into their cybersecurity platform, and so I was talking to him about what are people's feelings about using AI to autonomously identify threats and flag those up, and he said, well, a lot of people still want to have the human oversight, because when we look at something as integral as cybersecurity, there is a degree of concern maybe that AI won't necessarily be able to do what a person can do. It can do a lot of the manual stuff, because cybersecurity attacks all the time. But I thought it was interesting to hear you say that as well. And it sounds like it's still some way away, so it could be something we have time to think about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you think about, okay, AI, then if you ask the people around, are you using AI? Then most of the people say, no, I'm not using it so often. I tried a bit with ChatGPT, but what everybody forgets is you have your smartphone. So how do you unlock your smartphone? Basically, via, like, let's take an Apple word here, face recognition, right? So you unlock your smartphone with your face, and this is actually kind of an AI model already in the background, because you're building a model of the face, including the mask detection during the COVID times. So the concerns are there, but once you make them easier to bypass, put it that way, and it increases your personal efficiency, then everybody drops this concern already. Yeah? So it's it's not black and white. There is a lot of gray in between.
Sure. So if we go back to what you were saying in discussing the evolution of Edge AI, you were talking, of course, about cloud processing, which has been around for quite some time now. And I just wanted to understand, first of all, what is it that's driving the shift from cloud processing to Edge AI, and whether you thought there were any use cases that still warrant using the cloud to process data.
Yeah. I mean, at the end, the biggest thing about cloud processing is, of course, you have a lot of power in the background, right? You have those big server farms or whatever, where you have a lot of power in order to develop your specific AI model. But the thing is, you have the connection in between the edge and the cloud. So there is some time of, let's say, sending the information to the cloud and getting them back, so-called latency. Yeah? So, and if you bring now part of that power more to the device, then you reduce, of course, this latency. So you have more real-time information. You can act faster. And for example, if we then think about, let's say, worker safety, yeah, if you recognize from a worker safety perspective, you must not send it to the cloud. You can act much faster. So, for example, I don't know, if you have a chainsaw or whatever, and it shuts off because there is some security risk, then of course you need as less latency as possible. And this is the benefit of bringing everything to the device. So you reduce latency, you increase efficiency, and that's the main purpose of bringing, let's say, power from cloud to the device or to the edge. And of course, with that, you also have an reduced cost from the perspective, right? Because if I must not use the biggest server, the big server farms, and can do them on a local level, you have reduced cost. And last but not least, one of the biggest concern, especially in Central Europe, data privacy, right? So you can really control where your data is being sent. So if you think about GDPR, especially let's say German companies are very concerned about data privacy. You must not send it to the cloud. You can keep it all local. You have it safe and you have it under control, and you know what is happening. Cloud is always a bit, let's say, vague. Put it that way. So that's the benefit of bringing everything to the cloud, to the edge.
Do you think then that there will be circumstances where cloud processing will be needed?
Definitely. I mean, you definitely need the cloud processing mainly at the moment still for the model building. So if you think about AI, right, you start with kind of a model because you need to let the device understand what it needs to do. So for example, if you talk about model, then let's say ChatGPT, large language model, LLM. This model is of course run in the cloud because it's a lot of data which needs to be processed, which needs to be upload from each separate device, and we the users with our devices are just connected to the cloud. And there it's definitely still cloud based, also from the language model perspective. You can bring that in a smaller scale, of course, to an edge level with smaller desktop servers, but still the main building, the initial stage will be in the cloud, at least for the next, let's say, 5 years maybe.
Sure. So why don't we then talk a little bit about new and established use cases for Edge AI? Are there any interesting ones that you've observed?
I mean, there are a lot of interesting ones. I mean, thanks to Nvidia currently pushing heavily into robotics, right? So the big buzzword of Nvidia is robotics, and robotics not in the, let's say, sense of what we know as of today, like AMR, so those smaller robots, like we have, I don't know, lawnmowers or these kind of standard things which we have in a personal use case. Of course, you have this also in the industrial use case, like in the logistics environment, warehouse environments where the AMRs are connected to each other, understand their routing passes, and decide on themselves how they route them. Of course, I mean, on top of that, for the, let's say, robotics theme, which was brought up by Nvidia, you also see that in the healthcare. I just had an let's say news. I think 2 or 3 days ago, they had the first in Germany, especially they had the first transplantation, mainly done by robots. So of course there was still the doctor standing in the background and controlling the robots, but of course you increase a lot by efficiency here, right? You have no one who is waving his fingers around. You have a very precise cut. You have minimal invasion to the human body, and these kind of things. This really are lighthouse projects for me, because you really see then in a personal use case, not only as a buzzword in the industry. Yes, we are talking about AI. We are doing something with AI, but this in efficiency increase and to be more precise in terms of surgery, for example, I find this great. This is brilliant, and this will impact our life so much more than the thing which we might be worried about. Oh, yeah, if for example the efficiency of, let's say, financial data is increased due to AI, then I lose my job. No, it's just shifting your basically current workload to something else, which is still in the same segment, right? So I really like those kind of outstanding new projects.
Just out of interest, because we've touched on it a couple of times, which is public perception of AI, and I think there is definitely nuance and grey areas to be had, but for some people, there is the concern that without human oversight, there could be errors, and just I don't know if this is an easy question to answer, but I'm going to try to ask it anyway. How do you think you can communicate the value of things like that, like a robot that can do a surgery, without people having this perception that, like you alluded to it, people will lose their jobs? Do you think there's a way that industry can do that?
I think it will take time. So this brings me basically back to the example I brought up before with your mobile phone, right? So out of the sudden it was there. At the first, let's say the acceptance level was on a lower stage, right? Because you were used to, I don't know, I type my PIN code in there, then you had maybe your fingerprint is already, oh, okay, what about the data? Nobody thinks about it anymore. It will come over time. Of course, human oversight is needed, definitely. And you brought up one good point. Even AI still makes errors. Why does AI still make errors? Because you train them, and you can only train them based on your knowledge right now. So, and this is where, let's say, the change will begin. So that means we are training let's say, the models currently, or try to solve problems the way we have thought the last, let's say, 20 years. But we also need to change our way of thinking in training and solving problems. And this will then also, time after time, lower the, let's say, perception of the people in terms of, oh, I do not want to use it. That's my point of view. Yeah.
I'm sure when smartphones first came out, there was probably a similar kind of.
Definitely, definitely.
I don't know about that. And now they're everywhere. Yeah, sure. So, why don't we then get a little bit technical and talk about the design of edge AI systems? I mean, what if we look at, for instance, processor architectures? What should companies be thinking about when they want to deploy edge AI? What criteria should they be using, looking specifically at architecture?
That's actually a very good question, and it's not very easy to answer because it depends what you want to do. So, I mean, let's try to simplify it. If you would look into Advantech's portfolio, for example, our Air product line, then we separate it already by a bit of use case. And there you also see already the CPU selection depends a bit what you want to do. For example, so if we think about what we spoke before, if more, let's say, language model on a local basis, or then fine tuning of the model on a local basis or at the edge, then we think about our Air 500 series. And even there it depends. For the, let's say, more low end and less performance needed, we start on an Intel base. But for the real high performance, where you really want to do some fine tuning, where you need the performance power, there we go to AMD, for example, with the EPIX generation, which then support also more GPUs, because you also need more GPUs because they are more, let's say, efficient in terms of providing the performance for the model training. And last but not least, you also have a bit more options, of course, there. If you then go more to the, let's say, inference device, so the connection in between, not necessarily as an inference unit directly at the edge, but somewhere in between. Then we are at, for example, our Air 300 series, which are mainly Intel based, but you add some scalability from, let's say, external VPU power or NPU power via Halo, for example. So the typical vision application scenarios favor a bit of Halo. And of course, on the other side, you also have pure NVIDIA platforms like the NVIDIA Orin bases, right? Which start from small scale to high scale, but there you are a bit more limited in terms of scalability for the future. So they are perfectly in terms of performance power. But if you think about performance versus efficiency, you must not always use NVIDIA. They have a great community, they have great tools, they are definitely far ahead still. But there are other, let's say, beautiful ladies around which could be in the dedicated use case better for the customer. So it's not a 100% clear answer. And if you then go, for example, at, let's say, intelligent camera, then you might even consider devices being driven by a Qualcomm processor. So it really depends what you want to do. And this is why it's so crucial to understand what is the real ultimate goal the customer wants to solve. Do they want to do fine tuning? Do they want to excuse me? Do they want to do only some inferencing? And what is the expectation based on the current reference model being tested? So I mean, that also brings me to the point we are talking about often about TOPS or teraflops. So it depends a bit how you see it. Yes, it's an indicator, but always be careful with using the data. Always think about, okay, what was the model being used to generate those tops? Because I can easily say, I don't know, I can do 500 tops, but based on which model, and what do I really need to do so? So, for example, we had a use case last week ago. They started basically the whole development based on NVIDIA. We're looking into the NVIDIA Nano generation because they thought they maybe need around, in this case, I think 35 tops at the moment. So, and they thought, okay, then we just go with a small NVIDIA platform because, of course, NVIDIA does a great job. On the other hand, they found out if they use an smaller system, in this case, an Air 120 from our side, which is based maximum on an Intel i3, and add an Halo module to that one, they can fulfill already what they want to do. They get some scalability on top because in the future they could connect a second Halo module on top. And the initial tops they measured were based on a completely different model than they finally built the device on. So it really depends. And this is where we consult the customer, where we help the customer in order to let's really find out what they need and what they can then achieve in the best possible way.
Do you think sometimes there's maybe a risk of looking for the highest performance, the greatest number of tops, and that may not necessarily always be what a company needs?
Yeah, we see this quite often. We see it quite often. Because if you think about AI, and we are also pitching that very often, you need to think about scalability, right? Because where you start today, this will be completely different in, let's say, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And if you think about the industry, typically in the past until now, we want to have 10 to 15 years of longevity minimum. So if you think about healthcare or transportation, then best case 50 years. So this is shifting currently, right? You were then limited to, or basically in the past, you have trying to limit it and narrow it down to what you need right now, because you know the system will be stable for the next 10 to 15 years minimum. And with AI, this is a bit a different direction. Where you start now will be completely different in 5 years. So you need the scalability. And this is why people tend to start, oh, okay, then I just use a system which brings 500 tops. But this might not be the best way, because even if the system brings 500 tops now, what if the model changes? What if XYZ? And there we think we really favor, let's say, the approach of scalability in a system that you have different, let's say, IOs, which can be still connected, maybe add additional NPUs, VPUs from third-party vendors or whatever, so that you really get the scalability, which also favors then the initial, let's say, requirements of the customer, because you can start at what you really need to use now, so that in terms of performance versus efficiency versus power consumption and also cost maybe. So you start here and then you level it up time after time. And you still have the longevity of the industrial suppliers like from Intel, AMD, or even Halo offers basically 10 years of service lifespan right now. So this is what we think is a more suitable way for the customers.
Sure, and something to keep in mind for those listening, maybe that scalability is really important. You mentioned a few of your partners there, and for those listening who may not know, Advantech has quite a few partnerships, I would say, and I wanted to ask you, I suppose, the value of having that complete edge AI ecosystem and how it's helped you.
If we go back to the, let's say, your former question, how did, let's say, AI develop with the phase 1, phase 2, with phase 3, right? So phase 3, if you remember, basically was all about environment, connection, connectivity, and back and forth. And the same is it with the partner network. So we have been talking with Industry 4.0 or IoT approach the last years already, right? Or 5 years, 10 years ago. In my opinion, it never kicked off so deeply as it does with the AI approach right now. Why? Because if we think about AI, we always need to start thinking about the model which we use. And this will be, let's say, more and more specialized in the dedicated use case. So we will see, and this is already starting right now, of course, providers who are highly focused on building a model for a dedicated purpose. They will gather the expertise, for example, in worker safety or healthcare, and even there, then down to maybe surgery or just a smart operation room. Really narrow it down to the last cent of that information being needed for that real specific use case. So you think about model building. And as a company, of course, you can't do everything. So you need those specialists. You need those specialists who are capable to develop the model which you need. This is where you need a partner. Then, of course, you need to have the right sized hardware around it. So software is the one thing where it starts. You need to have the right sized hardware around it. So you need someone who is manufacturing, best case, your system, your module, your motherboard, whatever it is. So this is definitely needed. And then you need to have it integrated and up and running. So, and this is then kind of in a nutshell, the life cycle we look at, right? And this is where we need, as Advantech, also need a partner network to support us on the journey. Because at the bottom line, currently, we are still considered as the largest IPC company globally. So our core know-how is definitely hardware. We are improving and driving also our software adoption, which leads us back to the model building. And then, of course, you have that, let's say, in the after sales, you have also more or less all of the integration service partners which are around. So this is crucial to have this whole partner network and ecosystem in order to ultimately fulfill the customer's needs, right? And at the end, we are not delivering, and will never be our game to deliver to an end customer. Right. So you and me going in a shop, we see maybe, okay, there might be the device and the software based from our company in the background, but we will not deliver the whole unit.
Sure, great. If we go back to what you were saying earlier, you were talking a little bit about how you see people becoming gathering more expertise in specific use cases, which I think leads me on nicely to my final question for you, which is what you will see from AGI in the next 3 to 5 years. What will the trends be, and how maybe you guys adapting accordingly to what you see will be coming?
Yeah, I mean, what we definitely will see is more and more real self-learning at the edge. So because this is just a starting point where we are right now, right? So from that perspective, this is what we definitely will see. Because back what we discussed before, the let's say the blocking rate of the customers, the end users will get lower. So we will definitely see more and more of this real AI use cases, whatever it will be, because it starts, as we discussed, it starts maybe at the medical side or healthcare side, but you have it also in the logistics, in the manufacturing, in the work safety, in let's say smart cities. All of that will slowly grow. Some of them we might not even notice. Some of them for us are already there, but they will change the way how they work. So it will be definitely more about efficiency and increasing really this efficiency on existing applications. For the real new fancy ones, like, okay, I now have a human robot walking through the streets, let's say getting my groceries. Yeah, could happen, but I personally don't see it in the next 5 years. In some specific use cases, you already have it kind of today, like exoskeletons at airports helping the workers to lift the heavy luggages. So this could be possible, something where you really see a robot in the future, but also here still being controlled by a worker, of course. So it will be the minor things which we maybe will not notice, but we will notice it ultimately in seeing more efficiency and a better, let's say, life for all of us.
It's usually the beauty of technology. It often works behind the scenes, and we don't realise, but we definitely reap the rewards. Is there anything you want to mention to our listeners before we wrap up?
If you have not been in touch with Advantech right now, get in touch with us. We will support you on the journey of your Edge AI approach. If you want to reach out to us, of course, we have local sales offices in every country, in every region, and we are supporting you on your AI journey. And to you, Caitlin, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure seeing you again, and hope to have a conversation soon again.
Great. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
IoT Unplugged.